Welcome to the October webinar. We are really excited for this one because we have César Quintero here. He is from the Profit Recipe, and he's actually our very own coach too. He runs this business that helps firms to focus on empowering entrepreneurs implementing the best practices, and that's what he's going to show us today. He's going to show us how to run a great annual retreat. Here we also have Brett, our CEO and co-founder. We at GSU run retreats every quarter. We run yearly retreats too, and I think we all think they are of great value, and we use Cesar's secret recipe. So that's what you are going to be learning today. So we're really excited to have you here. And I guess without further ado, Cesar, the online floor is yours.
All right. I'm going to take the floor first. The reason is I got to give even more of an introduction for Cesar here. So thank you, Monica. And Cesar, thank you for being here. So just so everybody knows, Cesar is like in between flights right now. He's on his way to the airport basically, but he carved out time. We've been planning this for almost a whole year, but obviously it had to be timely. I didn't want to have a webinar about annual retreats in March, April, or May, for example. People would have tuned out. So hopefully we have our most well-attended webinar ever today. And the reason I'm excited to have Cesar is because, we started this business, Get Staffed Up, from day one using traction, or the EOS system. And so, we hired Cesar, and he has seen us grow from day one and how we've done everything. And, I just think very highly of Cesar. And the proof's in the pudding, because his own company called the Profit Recipe, where he's now had to expand and bring on more coaches. He's a licensed, essentially, user, franchisee, etc. of traction, but he's built his own business, full of coaches who are now growing like crazy. It's like they're so busy they have to turn clients away. And so I really appreciate your time, Cesar, and I'm just excited because I have run a business before that didn't have an annual retreat, let alone quarterly retreats. Monica mentioned quarterly retreats, but I don't want people to get distracted and get overwhelmed. For today and right now, if you have tried annual retreats, but you haven't had really coaching, or you don't know how to make them successful, or if you're just getting started, the annual retreat is so pivotal. I can't even imagine running without it. So thank you so much for being here, Cesar. I'm going to turn the floor over to you. I just wanted to give people more of a background. I've known Cesar for a very long time, and I wouldn't have him on here if it wasn't a very meaningful topic with a lot of value added today. So Cesar, my man, let's do it.
Awesome, Brett. Awesome, Brett. I want to just make a correction. We don't turn clients away. We never turn clients away. We are the largest firm in the world for EOS. We have eight implementers and 143 active companies right now. But yeah, we're always helping companies become their best selves. So that's why I'm here. I'm here to share that secret sauce of the agenda, the how to run it, how to go through the different elements. But before we get to annual retreat, I think it's important to also understand the reason for having these rhythms, right? A lot of times we talk about, we think about, and I'm gonna share my screen here, and we think about, like military, they go on the air, they can perform perfectly without executing, without planning, without doing, and that's just not the case, right? Every sports team, every performing team needs to have some time for planning, some time for reflection, some time for making sure that we know what we're going to do so that we can execute well. So a lot of times, and I can ask everybody in the chat is how many of you learn from doing? We always do things, do, but the reality is very few times we stop and reflect. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? And how do we course correct so that we execute better? So most of us think we learn by doing, but the reality is we don't. We have to pause, think, reflect, and shift. That's how we learn. That's how we innovate. That's how we grow. So I wanted to make a very high level of why is it important to have a meeting pulse, right? And the meeting pulse in general, number one is you want everybody pulling on the same direction, right? You can have people going this way, that way, here, but if we're all rowing on the same direction, we get there faster. We also need time to reflect. We needed time to pause. We needed time to really understand what are the obstacles in the way and what are the things that we need to plow through and what are the things that we need to go around, right? Also, we need a strategy to plan and execute. Strategy is not permanent. Strategy should always be shifting with the market, with your customer. You're not one company always. You're always shifting. So strategy only works once you're growing. But if your company stales, if your company goes down, the strategy needs to shift. And you can't do this if you're not taking awareness of and a check of what's going on in your company. You also need clarity of what roles, metrics, goals you need everybody to understand on how to get there. And most importantly, you need an agreement and a team commitment and trust, right? So these are the 5 main things on why a meeting pulse is important. Because a lot of times when we draft a goal, we say, okay, yeah, I have a goal for the year A to B. And ideally in utopia, we start doing everything we need to do on Q1 and it'll be done by Q2. And this is, all of our plans, all of our goals, we do them fast, we get them out of the way. But the reality is that we have procrastination monster and procrastination theory that gets in the way of that, right? So we'll think about it. We still got time. We still got a year. We still got a quarter. We still got a week. And things just start procrastinating. And then little by little, it's always an, oh, shoot moment. I need to hurry up and get to that point B fast. So you're always running down this, right, Brett?
I feel seen. This is like every college semester of my life.
It's like, I have enough time for this work. I have enough time for this goal. I know exactly what we need to do. But the reality is, what the meeting pulse helps us do, it helps us create these little influx of procrastination where if every week we're preparing what we need to do every quarter, and every quarter we're checking and pivoting on what we need to do for the year, and every year we're checking and pivoting what we need to do for the long term, then we're starting to ramp up a lot faster. And instead, and it gets us closer to the utopia place where we're always in motion, we're always doing things. So I just want to bring like a little bit of context on why it's important to have a meeting pulse, why it's important to have a retreat, why is it important to have all these meetings in place and the strategic planning in place in your company. I want to give a brief outline of the different type of meetings and the purpose for those meetings throughout the year, right? So on an annual basis, it's usually a 2-day retreat, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today most of the time. And the reality is those 2 days, the objectives are to connect, to strategize, and to plan. That's what we want to do. Annual is very, very strategic. Okay. Then we go to quarterly, and quarterly is a 1-day, right? Where quarterly, we're trying to reflect and understand how on track or not are we within our yearly priorities. So we need to reflect and establish the focus for the quarter, establish what are the main goals we need to do for the quarter. And then every week we need to make sure that we're plowing down those obstacles and collaborating on solutions that get us to that quarterly pulse. And then on a daily basis, we can have daily check-ins, just making sure we're in sync, we're tactical, where am I stuck, what do I need to do? And it's every single day. So when we plan, we always plan from far to near. And when we execute from near to far, right? So when we plan 5-year, 3-year, 1 year, quarter, week. And when we execute week, quarter, week, quarter, annual, 3-year, long term, right? So that's all that I wanted to share here a little bit on the reasoning for this.
I just like, this just looks like a slide with some numbers on it, right? And weekly and all that. The fractal model, which creates the flywheel, like I can't stress enough how incredibly powerful it is to have weekly meetings where you're supporting your quarterly goals and your 4 quarterly sprints, as you will, which comprise the whole year, which you set out at your annual, and then you have your longer term planning. It is just such a, and there's a lot of research on that you can look up on the fractal model, essentially.
Yeah, and the reality is, as human beings, we under predict what we can do in the long term, and we over predict what we do in the short term. So the clearer that is for everyone in the team, and the more we have it top of mind, when we think about these things, this is wartime planning, right? It's every week. Are we on track? Or are we not on track? What do we need to shift? What do we need to pivot? And then we make a quarter, a 13-week race where every week we're trying to get to that goal and trying to achieve that rock. And then at the quarter, we make sure, hey, are we on track or not to hit our annual goals? And then every quarter we're pivoting and shifting to make sure we hit our annual goals. And annual planning, which is a retreat we're talking about today, is all about, are we heading in the right direction? Is everything that we are doing in this company, are we headed in the strategic direction that we want to go? And if not, we need to pivot and shift as the market, as the customers, as a strategy requires us to do. So that's what this annual planning is mostly about.
All right.
All right. You want to get into annual planning?
Let's do it. We just launched the poll. How many of you have annual retreats? So if you guys can, yeah, I'm sure you'll be able to see that. So you can see the result, right, Cesar?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, people answering right now. Right now we're divided 50-50 on how many people have or not annual retreats. Let's see how this goes. We need 10 more.
It's gonna be within the 60-40, 50-50 range. So we're gonna help, hopefully 60% of people get better and then 40% of people learn how. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yep, that's where we're landing, 60-40. All right, I love it. So why don't we get into the details of what is the annual retreat and what do we want to do there? We're talking about 2 days, 1 day, so we'll talk about that variation. But most importantly here, if we think about annual retreats, what is an annual retreat, right? An annual retreat, as I said before, is a strategic planning session for long-term planning, team connection, and alignment. That's what we want to achieve during an annual retreat. We want to achieve 3 main things, which is connection, alignment, and plan, right? So that's what the annual retreat is. When does this happen? Usually, companies do it at the end of their fiscal year. Some companies do it at the end of the calendar year. But what I see the best companies do is they find when is their slowest season. When is their slowest season? Because a lot of companies, like if you're in retail, e-commerce, or different places, December, November is one of your highest seasons. It's not the time you want to do annual planning for next year because everybody's up the, like the work, the chaos, the thing. So you don't have the head to really plan strategically. So some companies plan, on summer is our slowest season, or on February is our slowest season. So they usually wait until the season slows down so that then they can take the time to reflect, connect, and plan, right? A lot of times, one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of companies do is that they always have to do annual planning by November, by December, so that we have the budgets in place and the finance in place. That could be a financial goal for that quarter, but it doesn't mean that the whole company needs to plan for the year in the end of the year months, right? So I want to make sure that what fits best for you is what fits best for annual planning, right? When is it that time that you get to slow down, that you can think, that your team can get together, that you can travel somewhere maybe and have an awesome experience? Because who should be part of this? It should be your leadership team. It should be people who are decision makers, people who dictate strategy in the different areas of your firm, right? So it's understanding who leads which department, who has teams under them, who creates processes and cross-functional systems. So you want to make sure that the right people are in this room that can give you strategic decision making in here. Now, don't think too much about salary or positions or none of that. Think about people who are really strategic and people who will help you make the right decisions. If you're a small firm and you don't have many people, is who in your team can help you make these decisions? All right, who in your team can help you have this strategic vision? So Monica was saying, when do you usually run it? All right, that's what we're answering right now. Awesome. Lastly, what I want to talk about here is, where do you want to have your retreat? And my only point is, try not to have it in the office. That's the only place I would not have it. Anywhere else. Try to get some companies do a retreat and they go a different city, they get a boardroom somewhere else, they get a hotel, a club, something that makes it a nicer experience, a place where people can relax, a place where people can connect and can think. All right, so we want people to feel in a creative space We don't want them to be pulled out of the office in the middle of the retreat because they need to go solve an emergency within the company, because that takes them from high level thinking to urgent and to, tactical thinking, right? So we want to make sure that we create the space and the environment where people feel that they can think and create. Brett, anything you want to add on the what, when, who, where before we get to the how?
90% of our clients that get stepped up, as are lawyers. So I think for like mentally, right, most of us slow down. We have time to sort of think over, the holidays. It doesn't mean you can't do your annual trip. You have a very slow summer for some reason, but it also doesn't have to be in January. It doesn't have to be, the last week of December. You just want to, you want to take off that business hat, right? The in the business, and have 2 days where you really get to just think with clarity and focus on big picture planning. And so that's why the dovetail into the where it's so important to get offsite.
Yep. All right. So should we get into the how? How to do it? All right. So how do we plan a retreat? There's 3 main areas of focus that we need to be intentional about during our retreat. All right. The first one is team health. You need to make sure that your team is aligned in trust, commitment, and behaviors. If you have core values, if you have a purpose, if you have a clear understanding on how to do that, you need to align your team in team health. You need to establish a connection. That's why we want to extract you from the office. That's why we want you, because this is your war team. This is a team you want to take to Mars. This is a team that is going to get you where you need to get to. So you need to develop that strong relationships, because we're not in the B2C, B2B company. We're in the H to H, right? We're in the human to human. And especially nowadays with people leaving and the transitions and the quiet quitting and the great resignation, all these things, people want to connect, people want to belong, people want to believe. All right. So the important thing is that you always want to make sure that your team, and you focus on your team connections. All right. The second thing we do is we reflect on what works, what doesn't work, what needs to improve. Right. And so for this meeting, we need to make sure we have the data for the year. We have all the results. We have the performance. We understand the current state. Where are we at? We do a SWOT analysis. We understand, what are our strengths, weaknesses, trends, opportunities, threats. We understand what the team dynamics are. We understand what the market trends are. So it's important to make it about reflection, right? So it's understanding where we are, where we stand, and where we should be going. And then lastly, it's establishing a plan for execution for the next year, right? So it's a long-term and short-term goals, metrics, and roles needed for the year and the plan that we want to do. So when we think about strategy, we're thinking, is where do we need to go? What do we need to be aware of? Who's a team that's going to get us there? And they need to be healthy. And then lastly, what's the game plan for us to play?
Yeah, and if I can chime in, one of the most powerful things you take us through every quarter, but annually is taking for everybody at the retreat, to take 5 minutes and reflect on what's not working. Most people just say, all right, what do we want to do this year?
Yeah.
Right. Fixing what's not working can help propel your company forward too, because again, if you don't fix the tire, you're not really going anywhere in the first place. And that will add in and then sometimes change the strategy, because you might think something's working as the owner of the business and find out like, I didn't even know that was like not working. So
Yeah,
that is a I don't want people to overlook that. It's a really powerful part of the retreat agenda.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about the agenda? So let's talk about the 2-day agenda. There's 2 days that we usually have in retreat, right? So day 1 is more about the team health, the clear company vision, and extracting all those issues that Brett is talking about, right? So the day 1 is more about understanding where are we now? Well, let's reflect on all the things that we did or we didn't do. So we always start with a check-in, humanizing it, understanding the wins, understanding what's going on. Then we go into reviewing the year and the quarter. And this could be metrics, this could be feelings, it could be different things on what performed, what didn't perform, why didn't perform, what are the roadblocks that are preventing us from hitting our goals, right? So we get into the reviewing side, where we're really trying to process what are the things that worked, what didn't work. I like to always grade the year. So if you want to take that note, is at the end of this reflection is let's grade the year. How did we grade? If it's a school grade, A to F or 1 to 10, right? Or 0 to 100, what grade would you assign it and why? And then with the why, let's remember to celebrate, but also be responsible and take responsibility over the things that didn't go well. So we can shine light on things and we can extract things. As the third objective here is we need to extract things and start building an issues list of all the things that we need to fix, all the things that we need to build, all the things that we need to do, right? So we're going to start extracting issues and building an issues list of all the things that we need to talk about. Then we go into the team health piece, and the team health is usually, I like to dedicate 2 to 3 hours of the first day to team health. Why? Because the most important thing about team is building that trust. There's a book I love to use called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And the 5 dysfunctions of a team talks a lot about how do you build trust in a team? How do you build results that we win together? How do you create commitment? How do you create accountability? How do you create healthy conflict, right? So when we're talking about these activities, we want to find trust building activities. Now, this is not kumbaya, kind of rah-rah circle, dropping down. It's mostly about really finding exercises that allow team members to get to know themselves better, get to know each other, their backgrounds, their personal lives. The more we understand each other, the more we can connect with each other, the more we can build that relationship and commit together in that area of when push comes to shove, right? So we want to make sure that we connect. We want to make sure that we clear the issues. The retreats are a perfect place for the buildup of tensions between a team to calm down and to reset. So this is a time where if there's any pressing issues, if there's anything that's happening between the team, it's a great way to cool it down, to have people speak their truth. There's a green tail exercise or healthy contract. Radical Candor is another book that you can use for this. So there's different books that help you with a framework on how to clear and how to make sure that everybody's on the same level and we can reset all of that there. And then we want also team activities and social, right? So this is why it's a 2 to 3 hour segment, because you want to go through that connection. You want to go through that tough conflict resolution, but then you always want to do a team activity as well. A lot of people at the end of day one, they add a social to it. They add something, like axe throwing or top golf or an activity that they can do together, because once we reflect, we celebrate, we talk about it, we tackle our clearing issues piece between us, it's good to decompress in the afternoon, and that way we become better prepared to plan the next day. All right. So when we talk about team health, I usually dedicate 2 to 3 hours during the meeting, but then I also recommend at the end of day one to going out and do a team building activity, a fun, dynamic and social activity so people can bond better as well.
Cesar, if I can interject, I mean, we could probably spend a whole webinar on the 5 dysfunctions of a team, right? The bottom level that every team needs to have is trust. So you mentioned a few books, but do you have a resource? And if not, we'd just pop them in the chat. But like, what else can people do to help get, because just because you put on the agenda doesn't mean your team's going to be open and honest, right? You need to build that culture and create the trust so people know they're not going to be penalized for saying, this is not working, and then the owner, us, right, getting defensive and upset, that sort of thing. So
there's a book called Crucial Conversations. It's a great book that can help you frame this. There's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is a great book that helps you frame this. Radical Candor is another book that helps you frame this. These are 3 resources. You can have people read these books before getting to retreat, and that way they come better prepared with a mindset of, we're doing this for the betterment of ourselves as teams, for the betterment of ourselves as people. But that's also why you want to make sure that we also do a connection before we go into that healthy conflict and issue clearing, right? We want to make sure that we trust each other, we know each other better. A way to do a connection exercise. So the 3 books I talked about is more about issue clearing. The connect could be an assessment. It could be Colby, Strength Finders, DISC. any type of assessment that gets us to understand our differences, understand our similarities, any icebreakers that get to know you better are great at connection. So the more we get to know about each other, the better it is for all of us to understand where we're coming from. And when that happens, we can have better discussions. All right. Joe Bravo says, how is this for connection exercise? Asking, who were you before you joined the company and who are you after hours? I love that. Yeah. Like what are your favorite things to do after when you're not at work or things like that? But I would go a step further. I would go into, I like asking questions like, where were you born? How many siblings you had? What was the biggest challenge you had growing up? What was your worst job you've ever had? What were things that that no one you usually don't tell people, right? So we want to cross that line where a lot of times, especially, we want to cross that line from professional to really cross the line into people, into understanding who they are as people. Because the more we understand each other as people, the more we can trust each other and we stop taking things personal.
Yeah,
Right?
we did a retreat recently, and the what was your biggest challenge growing up? It really got emotional and deep, and you saw a lot of layers peeled away, and people really open up, and that was very important for setting the tone. That's a great one.
Yeah, and the reality is, once you set that tone for people to open up and say, then it's creating that tone for people to open up also, and what's not working in the company. What do we need to change? What do we need to shift? So it gets you to a level of sharing that, first, once we deal with us as people, then we can now deal with a company. And that's when we move into organizational checkup. It's understanding how our process is doing. This could be there's a Rockefeller's habit list or EOS or checkup or list, or best practices in a law firm list, or there must be a list where you can benchmark, how is my organization doing and holding up against the market, right? Do we have the meetings in place? Do we have the metrics in place? Do we have the communication in place? Do we have a feedback loop? So there are lists that you can measure against and you can check on whether you're performing or not performing. If you go to eosworldwide.com, you can do a free organizational checkup and you can have everybody submit it there, and then you get a score and it tells you exactly where you have to be focused on. So there's free resources out there where you can just go in and plug these in and it'll give you feedback, and then you can process this during the retreat where it's okay, our meetings aren't working. Let's add that to the issues list. What are the things that we need to improve? The processes aren't working. The onboarding isn't working. The intake process isn't working. The sales process isn't working. Whatever's not working, then let's bring it up and we start extracting issues as we have been throughout the day. Then I talk about here VTO review, which is really a vision review. VTO is an EOS term called the Vision Traction Organizer. And the vision review is really understanding, right, what are our core values? What's our core focus? Why are we doing this? Why are we in business together? Why am I part of this group? And why did I choose to stay here? And we want to make sure that everybody in the room is aligned on where the company's headed, on what the behaviors are for all of us, and what is our purpose and all these things. And then you go into a SWOT analysis, right? Strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, trends, right? Where you can really start thinking about, if this is where we want to go, if that's our perfect picture as a company, where are we stuck in right now? And what's the roadblocks that are preventing us from getting there, right? And strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Okay. So day one is all about extracting issues. It's about reflection. It's about connection. It's about really bringing all the things up. And then we'll have a long laundry list of things we need to improve. And my objective is to always get to at least like 50 to 100 issues in a board of all the things that we need to correct, all the things we need to improve, all the things that we need to get done within the next, short and long term. Brett, anything you want to add?
No, this is great so far.
Yeah. All right. So should we go to day two?
Yeah, let's do it. In fact, I just had a thought, for Get Staffed Up, we're all virtual, including, the leadership team. So making people you know, Enrique and I, my co-founder, we go somewhere different, right, for all the retreats, but even making the virtual team, requiring them to go somewhere else so that they're removed from their typical, you know, work from home or wherever
That's a
scenario.
great insight. Great insight. Yeah, because if not, your mind can get to that creative space of really extracting and extracting yourself from the day to day. All right. So day one is all about connecting the team and it's all about extracting all the issues from all levels. So day two is all about planning. So day one is all about connection and reflection. Day two is all about planning. So when we go here, what are the objectives of day two? The objective is to plan to achieve the vision. We need to create the plan. We need to create a plan for the short term as well. The next 90 days, what are we going to be doing? So we create the plan for the year and we create the plan for the quarter, but then we need to resolve any key issues. I love using half of this day just to solve stuff that we can't solve on the day-to-day of our company. A lot of times there's these issues that are these elephants in the room that keep pressuring in the back of your head throughout the whole year, and you haven't been able to get to it. So I love to take the time during this day to really tackle every issue we can so we can solve it and get aligned, right? So that's the way we go through the agenda here. We start with a check-in, reflecting on the previous day, what worked, what didn't work, how do we set an intention for the day. And then we go into reviewing the issues list from the last day. Hey, these are the 50 things that we talked about. Do we combine, kill, you know, delete anything that's off? What do? We condense it, we go over it, and then we start thinking forward. So up to this point, we've been thinking past, we've been reflecting, we've been letting go of the luggage of our personal relationships, and we're trying to make sure that we move forward. So now what we're doing is now we start looking long term, right? We start understanding, okay, if my vision is we want to be over there by year 10, by year 5, then where do we want to be by year 3, right? So if we're planning right now, it would be by December 2025. Where do I want to be by December 2025? And this exercise about the yearly picture and the picture is all about, there's a book called Vivid Vision by Cameron Harold. And what he talks about there is a lot of times when we plan, we want to make sure that we paint the picture. We want to have a painted picture of what that looks like. And this is an exercise when you're planning long term, you want to be like 50% confident that you can achieve this, or the how you're going to achieve this. And you're going to just imagine, where am I going to be 3 years from now? How many employees are we going to have? How many locations are we going to have? How many clients are we going to have? What are achievements that we won? What are awards that we achieved? What are different things that we've done within our company that have gotten us here, right? And I want us to move in time, right? And fast forward to the future 3 years. I want you to think about it as you already did it, right? And that creates a huge momentum and really understanding how to get there. Now, one of the critical pieces, especially in law firms, is you know, you got the partners, the attorneys. I would always ask, how much do you want to be making 3 years from now? And then your company should be following that suit, right? So if in my mind, I know as a partner, I want to make this much, then what does a company need to make in order for me to make this much? And then what needs to happen within my company to get there? And that's another way that you can paint this 3-year picture, is really understanding where that's going to be and how that's going to be. What this creates is a powerful, vivid vision, an image of where you can be. And even if it's 50% accomplishable, it's still driving you, and the decisions you're making today are going to drive you to go there. One of the things I love doing with you guys, Brett, at Get Staffed Up is when, and the law firm also, we revisited the first 3-year picture we did when we started, and 95% of the things that we said had been done, had been accomplished, right? Even though we thought they were dream, there were no way 50% confidence level that we could do that. After 3 years, we saw them again, and we had accomplished most of them. Remember that day?
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah, and it's crazy because a lot of times when you start thinking about things, your behaviors start changing, right? And now you start behaving that way and doing things in a different way, thinking about a different scale, a different type of company that you have now. So once we paint that picture, then we go into the 1-year plan. And that 1-year plan is more tactical. We want to be 80% confident that we can achieve these goals. So now understanding where we want to be in 3 years, what do we need to accomplish next year to get there? And this is where we want to make sure we have 5 to 7 goals. You know, what's the revenue next year? What's the profit goal next year? What's the measurable goals next year? What are the top things we need to get done in order to achieve our year and get towards that 3-year picture? So that's a great exercise that you're going to have and you're going to talk. Then once you understand the year, now you can get the quarter, right? So what do we need to do Q1? Your annual retreat, the reason it's 2 days, it's that you're not only planning the year, you're also planning your first quarter. So now we need to understand, okay, if we want to be here in a year, what do we need to do in the next 13 weeks to start getting there? Right? So remember, when we plan 3-year, 1-year, quarter, right? And then once we do that, now we start determining, okay, this is the focus of what we need to focus on this quarter. What are the roadblocks? What are the issues that we need to tackle? We need to align as a team to start getting there. So that's why today is very executional. It's very about understanding and planning, but also focusing, prioritizing, and kicking things that we don't need to be talking about right now. So remember that issues list that we talked about that were 50 to 100 issues. What we're using that issues list is to help us plan better. It's to help us determine what are the key priorities, but then also determine what not to focus on. Out of that 100 issue list, we want to filter it as much as we can on what are the things that we don't want to spend our energy on, the things that we don't want to talk about, and the things that we to our next quarterly conversation, right? We want to make sure that we understand what we need to do, but most importantly, what we don't need to do. And that way we establish a clear focus on what are the top things we need to get done. Right?
Yeah, Cesar, I wanted to jump in and make a point about sort of the review 3-year picture, right? That sort of presupposes you have a 3-year picture. And so I wanted to just touch on that real quick. First of all, in terms of having a 3-year picture, you don't like what you said, and just make sure everyone heard this is you got to be like pretty sure that's where you want to go, right? Like I'm pretty sure that I want a vacation house in the mountains, right? Like talking for myself, but I don't know the exact city, right? I don't maybe even know the exact state, but I'm pretty sure within 3 years that could happen. For example, that's what we mean, because let's say you don't do any planning and you just running your business, right? You could be driving day after day west when really you want to go east, right? Or north when you want to go south. And that's what the retreats set you up for, is let's make sure that our car is going to function properly. We're going to spend a day reviewing and making sure like the car actually works, right? Or if not, like what we need to fix. And then when we take off, and we start attacking the first quarter with the idea of where we want to end up at the end of the year, we're at least going in the right direction. You don't have to know the exact amount of people you're going to have in 3 years, the exact amount of revenue. You just know you're heading in the right direction, not wasting your time. And that's sort of the why this is such a powerful model, because yeah, you may course correct as you called it, Cesar, here and there, but your team, your focus, like you're recruiting the right type of people with the right core values on the right bus, because you've done the planning. And I know I sort of threw out some other concepts here, which are part of what you help teach people about, Cesar. But it is just so important to not be too narrow focused, to not only say, look, I can't even think about 3 years from now, I just need to focus on the next week. Fine, sometimes you got to put out fires and save yourself or your business from burning down, right? But really, the point here is, if anybody in the legal field has read the book Fireproof, or has heard of Fireproof, right? Cesar, I don't even know if you know this, but there's an attorney in Michigan by the name of Mike Morrison. He wrote the book Fireproof. In the book, he kind of references EOS and traction a little bit, but it's essentially that's what it is. It's what Cesar is teaching here, because Mike was one of the early clients of Gino Wickman, and he grew this huge law firm, and now he like sort of retells the story, but it's in an okay way. It's a direct just pull, like everything is this. It's what Cesar's talking about. It's implementing traction to, help you from fighting fires day to day, which is day after day exhausting, and it's a frustrating way to run your business. I've been there. I know 100% for a fact. And this system, the implementation, I know we're talking about annual retreats today. But part of the annual is the bigger and longer picture. And then at the end of the day, focusing on, okay, what are the next 13 weeks? What do we need to do to really start off, this quarter, and not hit the procrastination, oh my God, panic
Curve. Yeah.
curve at the end of the year.
And that's why I say when either review or do the 3-year picture, it's a 50% confidence level. Like, you don't have to be 100% confident. It's just a directional pull of where we want to go. And there's a whole book about this called Vivid Vision, that you can see. All right. Then it's important once you discover the issues and you establish the next steps, then you conclude for the day. And this is what the 2-day agenda looks like. This is kind of what the retreat is all about. So is there anything else you want to add, Brett? Any questions in the room that we might pull, or anything before we get into?
Let's go ahead. We may need to do an icebreaker, right? To loosen up this group to then get some questions. But I would really love, so you can either ask a question in the chat, and Cesar, and maybe even, I'll answer it, or we can make you live. If anybody wants to sort of volunteer to go live, we can always add you, pop in on your camera here and have a conversation. Doesn't have to be like laser coaching or laser feedback or anything like that, but it is nice to have people ask some real questions. I'm sure there's a lot, because when you've been doing this so long like Cesar, or going through it so long like me, everything makes sense in our heads because we're so used to this, right? But if it's as new for you, there's a lot of information here. So, please, I at least would love some questions and some interaction right now. In the meantime, Cesar, what do you
Yeah, a typical question I get is, it's if we're only 5 or 6 people in my company, where do I just do it by myself, and if that's the case, if your law firm is less than 10 people, I would do it all together. The more you're all together, the more everybody's committed to the vision, the more everybody's committed to where you're going, the more the team dynamic works. So I would incorporate everybody. Like, if you're a smaller firm, I would go with the whole firm. If you're a larger firm, I would pick and choose, like, and also, understanding egos, but who are the people you want to be part of that strategy team, to get there, right? So a lot of people go like, yeah, like, if I don't have a leadership team, who's my leadership team and all that? Like, I would just think of the key people that can help you make strategic decisions. Andres has a question here. How do you prioritize the projects that need to be done each quarter when you have a long list of things you want to accomplish for the year? Isn't that the story of our lives, man? Andres. So yeah, 100%. I think it's having them all in a list. The reason I call it an issues list is, when you go to sleep and you have so many things in your mind that you can't go to sleep because you're thinking and thinking and thinking. But once you write them down, you're able to flush them out of your head, and then you can go to sleep at peace because they're in a piece of paper. The same thing happens with all the projects you need to get done. Like, in our heads, it's like, we have 100 projects we need to get done. Let's put them all in paper, right? And at the end, they're like really 15. And then, we need to do all these things. And then you add more and you add more and you add. If you have a running list, a parking lot, an issues list, a place where things and issues are parked, then you need to start saying, look, how many people are we? And nobody should take more than 1 to 3 projects a quarter, right? And then let's start going through the list and purging what is required right now and what can wait. What is important? What is urgent? Right? What is important and what is urgent? A lot of times the important is important, and we need to do it, because a lot of times we get stuck on the minutia, on the noise, on the things that are happening, and we don't get stuck. And we need to be focused on the things that will move us forward the most. So when you have all that list, what we do is we go one by one and we say, is this now or is this later? Is this now or is this later? Is this now or is this later? And it's a compromise. people are talking, no, we need to do that right now. No, wait. Well, if we don't do it now, it won't create this big a deal. Let's wait for next quarter. So the more you can prioritize, the more you can focus, the more you will be able to do. The more you do, the less you'll move. The more focused you go, the faster you'll get there. So the fewer things you pick, right? Pick only the most important things, you'll get there faster. You'll get there faster.
Awesome. Yeah, I was gonna say, sometimes like right before I go to bed, oh my gosh, do I have this, this, and this? Except, we talk about delegating me to freedom, right? Monica's gonna love this one. Instead of making sure I have it written down, I'll just send it to my personal assistant team, right? Like, hey guys, don't forget this, this, and this. And then the next morning they're like, yeah, Brett, we have that all, But that's my way of just like making sure that I have everything. So and I also want to make the point that for the annual, it's a 2-day retreat so that you can get the company time and you can, like I've even seen this happen. When Cesar works with us, we do 1 day full team, and then the second day of the annual is the leadership team. And sometimes you're just a little too small. It could be your spouse. I've seen a lot of people with smaller firms. They're like, your spouse is actually a really good sounding board usually, because they're not in it with you, but they're seeing the like what you talk about and what you maybe complain about and point out, and they can tell you like, this seems like an issue, this seems like a priority. So there is if again, maybe it's a four-person firm, have the full day of team building, and then maybe the planning you want to do with yourself or even a spouse or maybe like a best friend, somebody. You can even like hire someone, right? And then present back to the team, here some of the decisions that are made. So you are involving them at a certain point, but not completely. And just so you know, like for the law firm that I still I still have, and we're almost 40 people. We do hybrid retreats, half the team's in person, half the team's remote. For Get Staffed Up, we're 100% remote. So all of these retreats are done virtually. And that does not, I can tell you from experience, it does not take away at all from the impact. When you're on Zoom and cameras are on, Cesar's a big fan of saying cameras on, mute off. I want sounds real time. I want focus, put everything away. And let's make this, real. And you can get people to open up. We've had people, break down and get real emotional during the day one when we're sort of doing the team building exercise, and it doesn't detract because it's virtual. So I wanted to make that point as well.
Yep, that's great. Yeah, and a lot of times it's a great point, like even your spouse or even a friend or even anyone, because a lot of times when we get to plan ourselves in our head, we can't hear us. We can't reflect well. It's good to talk things over with somebody else, have a sounding board. So it's really important that when you're planning, and if you're if you're a 4-person firm or if you're a 3-person firm, I think it's important for you to really understand also, like somebody to have especially in the strategy side, right? Any other attorneys, maybe 3 attorneys get together and plan together, right? On complementary fields or whatever it is, then you can understand your goals. You can feed each other leads. You can find each other ways to do that. So try to find a way in a community to do this with. Don't do it just alone, because it won't achieve what you need to achieve.
Yeah. Very good point. So we've barely lost any attendees, which I hope that means people got really good value out of today. Usually in any webinar that there's a little bit of a drop off, but we think we lost like 1 person doing the whole thing. So clearly people were engaged today and we're getting a lot of value. That's really great. Cesar has put his contact information here at the bottom of the chat. His email and his website. I almost said recipe because it's the product recipe. But contact him for the recipe, right? And Cesar, will you share this deck with us so we can?
Yeah, of course.
If
I'll share the deck, and then also any materials, any agendas that you guys need. If you want a sounding board on how does this agenda look like, what would you change, what would you shift? We only have 1 day. How would you change that? Just let me know, and we can have somebody in the team look it up, and we can do it together, and we can really help you get the best annual retreat you want.
Yeah, And for the main book recommendation, it's Traction. That's like if you read, if you're like me, you read Traction. I was like, how do I get this? I just love it so much. Makes so much sense. And it's helped two, my two companies really just, grow in the right way. Without me having to just fight fires, and I lost all my hair anyway, but I was just, pull out my hair the whole time. So I'm hopefully less stressed than I look. But Cesar, looks like we don't have any more questions, so no need to take 7 extra minutes just in case. Yeah, I mean just to do it. So if we don't get anything else that pops up, then everybody, thank you for attending. If you're a client, thank you. If you're not, thank you. It doesn't matter. I hope you guys really got great information. We open this up to everybody, and we're not trying to sell, our services on the back end, or say, like, if you hire Sovereign today, then they'll work with Cesar. Nothing like that. Like, we just hope that you guys took really good information, and please reach out to Cesar and his team, because he's hiring amazing people that are just to work with more and more clients, because there's just too big of a demand for the amazing service that he's providing. Every time Cesar, hosts an event, it's booked, it's sold out. So Cesar, we know your time's valuable, and we thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me, Brett.
Awesome, buddy. Take care. Thanks,
All
everyone.
right, everyone.